So not only did Nintendo finally announce the release date of Splatoon 3, but they actually gave us some gameplay to finally look at. So you knew this was coming, so for this video we're going to be taking a look at this gameplay and going over some things that I noticed, along with a couple other things. First off, we just have their tweet, and this was posted at 6:02 a.m. the morning of. I'm actually recording this the same day this went live. I woke up, rolled out of bed, and unlocked my phone to see this posted like the absolute second it did. That was an interesting thing to wake up to. But now let's just get right into it with the actual video itself. So we'll just get started. Right away we can notice that there's a change to the start screen here. We can see not only all the names of the players are actually being displayed on the screen, but we also see titles, little names that people can assign to themselves. A lot of games have this nowadays, where you can just, especially like a lot of multiplayer games, have little titles you can name yourself. And then also in the bottom corners here, we see some numbers, a pound sign followed by some numbers. My guess is this probably is either tied to a rank, like to show what your position is in a region, or it could be to combat names that repeat. So for example, if you look at Discord, your name has a pound sign followed by a series of numbers. That series of numbers exists so in case somebody shares the same name as you, that the name, like, you can use the same name multiple times. That's probably the more likely of the scenarios, is that this number exists to differentiate people who may have the same name. Because, like, you know, if I use the name Silver, and then we find another person named Silver, because it's not like it's uncommon, then this number is how you'll tell who is who. Then we get to see the Alpha Team spawn, and we see the bow, the splatter shot, the octobrush, and then a slosher. I am super happy that they're showing the octobrush. Now, it was probably fair to assume that it was going to return regardless. I'm pretty sure almost every main is going to return in some way, shape, or form, but it's nice to see that the octobrush is in fact confirmed. Then we see the Bravo team spawn in, and they have the Splat Charger, the Splat Roller, 52 gal, and Splattershot Pro. Then, here's something that's interesting. I am actually curious to how much freedom we get when it comes to spawning. This is the first time we get like a real extended look at the spawn, and there are these little icons, the little squid icons, that let you see where your teammates are spawning. That's super nice, so you can get an idea of where your teammates are trying to move. It's probably going to be solely restricted to areas like this. I don't think you could probably spawn some of these farther out spots. I think you're probably restricted when it comes to where you can choose to roll out. Then, once they start, the very first thing we're going to notice right away is the summon special of the Splatter Shot here, with a Suction Bomb and the Trizuka. Actually, I think that's the Trizuka. Then we see it roll out, paint up the map a little bit. This is, what was it? Eeltail Alley, I think it was. One of the first maps we got to see. Then we swap over to the 52. The 52 gal here has the Splash Wall and the Whale 5.1. And as we actually watch them build up to it, I want to point out that something people may miss when they watch this is it looks like it takes 190p to build up the Whale on the 52 here. This, of course, could always change, but interesting to point out that it looks like 190p is what it takes to build the Whale. We can see that the 52 gal is still, in fact, a two-shot weapon. Here we get to see the Splattershot Pro, which has this, which I don't know what that's supposed to be yet, and then has the crab tank. And as we can see here, they're just sort of shooting, and right there, it looks like the sub is a more concentrated version of the point sensor, because it's marking this person, but it seems like that's all it does. Now, I'm actually curious if this lasts longer than point sensor does now, or if it lasts the same duration. Because something like this that requires a bit more aiming, I feel like it should reward that by leaving the mark a little bit longer. We can also gauge that it's going to take roughly 200p to build a crab tank on the Splattershot Pro here. Then here we get to see the Trizooka come into play, and it looks like it shoots, well, rockets that twirl around and then do like an arc movement. This is different than the like tall towers of ink that shot across the entire map that the original Inkzooka was. This one takes a little bit more forethought and requires a little bit more aiming than the Inkzooka used to. Now, as they move up here, we actually get to see chargers now have this weird glowing effect around them, which I'm not sure how I feel about this. This is probably going to be a real like sticking point. I feel like some charger players are probably going to be real upset to see this, and it's understandable. I feel like the signs for seeing a charger that they introduced prior are just fine, like having the chargers glow a bit when they're charged up, and then having the laser I felt was always enough, but to see they're adding another effect is kind of weird to me, because chargers aren't even really in that amazing of a place. This is something you would do if they're like overly oppressive and want to make it super obvious where they are, but chargers aren't like that right now, so I don't understand what they're trying to do. Then we can see here this little bubble up here. In fact, if we scroll back a little bit, we can actually see the player here that's actually the one that's doing it. So if we go a little bit frame by frame, we can see that this little object comes out of the splat roller here. And my theory as to what this is it's a bubble shield. If you've ever played the game Overwatch or played Apex Legends, both games have a character that has a sort of bubble shield. Overwatch has Winston and Apex has Gibraltar. They both place down a literal bubble shield that blocks damage from the outside, but is still susceptible to damage on the inside. My theory is that this is how that will work. The bubble is blocking damage from the outside of it. However, I can assure you that if the Splattershot swam into the bubble, they could probably deal all the damage. This would actually be a bit of an interesting mechanic to see them incorporate here, because one thing that Apex and Overwatch both have with the characters that use bubble shields there is like a sort of dance where they go in and out of the bubble. They sit at the very edge and try to like coax people to like do the dance with them. I'm constantly trying to get in the bubble with them, get out of the bubble with them, get in the bubble with them. So that, my guess is that's how that's going to work here, is where it blocks outcoming damage or outward damage, but if you go in the bubble with them, they're not protected. And then we get to see that when you die to somebody, you get their same player card here that's shown at the beginning, along with a view of their gear, like usual. Here we get to confirm that Special Power Up, Special Saver, and Ink Recovery are coming back at least. Then, here we get to see the Splat Charger. It has a Splat Bomb, and then this special thing. My guess is this actually takes 200p, because if we were to go back a bit, just as the Splattershot is coming up, the charger doesn't have special until the Splattershot is killed. The turf from the Splattershot's death is what gave him the special, and the fact that they're sitting at 220 leads me to believe it's 200 to get the special. Here in a second we'll get to use, and here we can see what the special is, and it's a giant vacuum. Now, what it's doing might not be super obvious. In fact, to really tell, you would kind of have to listen to it carefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the volume of this just for a little bit to see if we can hear what's going on. So what's happening there is it seems like the vacuum is actually absorbing damage. As the slosher was sloshing at it, you could hear a little bit of a noise. So what it seems like the vacuum machine here is doing is it's designed to absorb damage and then spit it back out. Now I wonder if it could even absorb subs as well, or if it's just main attacks that it absorbs, and then how much damage it does. Like, does it do 1-to-1, or does it do slightly less? But it seems like the point of the special is to absorb and then spit damage back out. Then we get to see the bow. The one interesting thing that I noticed about this is it actually has the same charging sound as a charger, and it actually has 2 levels of it. You can kind of hear it a little bit. If you can hear, it sounds like it has 2 tiers of charging. I'm actually curious is if that affects the way that the shots are fired out of the bow, like horizontal or vertical. Then we see them lose out to the Splat Charger. Then we get to see the thing I want to see the most, the Octobrush, as well as the special I was actually hoping the Octobrush would get, the Zipcaster. Along with the fact that the Octobrush actually has a lethal bomb. I really hope this kit stays. I really hope this kit stays. But we get to see the Zipcaster. The Octobrush player latches onto the exterior wall and onto this pole to get the Splat Charger here. The thing I'm curious about, and it probably does work this way, I imagine, is it based off the player reticle? Because I imagine it must be. It's in spectator mode, so we can't see the player reticles, but I imagine you jump to where you're aiming at. And then, of course, once it's over, they return to where they jumped. That's something we already knew was a thing. Then we get back to the Pro here, and here's where we actually get to see the crab tank being used. And it kind of looks like it has 2 different firing modes, a spraying mode and then like a burst mode. I don't know if it can swap between those with a different button. That's probably what it is. Or if it sprays for a little bit then fires a burst. It doesn't seem like that just because there's an inconsistent amount of time between them. So I think that it must be one button shoots the burst and one is just for spraying. And then we don't really get to see them make any use of the mobility, just painting. You can also see in the distance some players jumping back into the map, which does confirm that you can continue to just drop into the map. The only time we've ever seen it before was at the initial spawn, but it's good to know that at any point you'll be able to just jump back in. And then what you can see there, only at the tail end of this, and it did show up a little bit earlier, but I didn't mention it. The Splat Bow, when it shoots, it leaves the darts on the ground for a little bit that will then later explode, dealing damage. Like I said, it did show it off a little bit earlier, but I just forgot to point it out. You can see it a lot more prominently here, and then a little bit further into the video you can see it some more. Then we get to see the whale here. It looked like all it does is trail the player for a little bit, and then marks a target, and then just shoots at them. But the 52 player here isn't moving a whole lot, so it's entirely possible that it can continue to move with the player. But from what it looks like, it follows him a little bit until a target is found, and then it just shoots. If that's the case, that's fine. If it continues to walk with the player, that's pretty scary stuff. Then here we get to see the Slosher use the new Ink Strike, which is, in this case, just 3 grenades it looks like, and then an Ink Strike lands wherever the grenades land, which is certainly better than what it was in Splatoon 1, and it comes out much faster, so it actually poses a threat this time. Then we are here at the bow again. Here, this little spot at the top of the bubble shield, I'm pretty sure, my assumption is that this is the easiest way to break it. This is probably where its health actually is. If you shoot this, then it breaks and it's gone. Other than that, my guess is still what I said earlier, with my theory being that you go in and out of the bubble to deal damage and to block damage. You can also hear it take damage when the bow is shooting at it. And as mentioned earlier, this really shows off the fact that the arrows stick on the ground. Now, this is something that's kind of important. During the video I made where I was talking about the salmon run, there was the discussion of if the squid roll provided invulnerability frames. And it was kind of hard to tell in that video, but this provides more definitive proof that it does. And as we'll go into later, even Nintendo confirms it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up a little bit, and I want you to listen real carefully to the sound effect you hear here. You catch it? It sounds very much like ink armor taking a hit. So it does provide some invulnerability. Granted, we don't know how much invulnerability, if it does it all the time, if it's only for a certain amount of damage, or if it's like you have to have a very precise window to do it, otherwise you still take the damage. I would hope it's something like that, where you can't just constantly spam the roll to continuously have invulnerability. Then we get to see the Zipcaster again here. Now, one thing that is really obvious with this clip of it is the Zipcaster actually is based off your ink consumption. So when they use the Zipcaster to jump, look at the amount of ink that's used, or the amount of special. It's only like 3 to 4 ticks, but then they flick a couple times and it drops down like 6 ticks. So I could see the purpose of this being that the whole point is you're supposed to have a plan in mind when you use it. So you can't just constantly fly around the whole map, get a couple shots in on everybody, and then return just fine. They probably want to encourage having a plan in mind and then executing on some plan. So it's instead of like jumping in, dilly-dallying around, and then getting out, you have to have some forethought and actually know where your opponent is, who you want to go after, and then get in, get the kill, and get out. And we can see more of the squid roll here, just being used to avoid the whale. And then we see the vacuum come up again. And then the splat roller, which the splat roller, as we can see a little bit here, has curling bomb. So curling bomb does return, at least for now. Oh, and also the splat roller is never featured in here. You just don't really get to see any gameplay of the splat roller. But we know the curling bomb is its sub, and that bubble shield is its special. And then it just appears to die instantly. And the match is over. Now, this could be me looking too much into things, but I want to point out something about Judd and Lil Judd here. So, the theme of Splatoon 3 is chaos, and it's based off the final Splatfest we had that was order versus chaos. I think, and my theory is that these two are representing order and chaos. If you look at Judd's fur, it's clean, but then you look at Lil Judd, and he's clearly not clean. He's not very well kept, and he probably doesn't bathe himself. My theory is that they're actually representing order and chaos, with Judd being order and Lil Judd being chaos, which also fits because if anyone watching has ever had a kitten, kittens can tend to be, well, the definition of chaos. But that's just a theory, and again, me maybe looking a little bit too much into things. Then we get this little awards screen, which features overall splatter, which is probably most turfed. Popular target might be who died the most, and enemy splatter being probably who got the most kills. And then it just goes to a shot of the entire team, and then it just shows us the release date. So that means the screen showing the overall results, like how much turf was painted, how many kills, assists, things like that, are either not here, completely gone, moved to only the app, or they are here and just weren't shown off in this footage. I'm pretty sure it's still there. There's no reason for them to not display at least some of that information, because it's still important. And I don't know about you guys, but I really don't like looking at the app after every match. I don't like the idea of doing that. But that's not all of the information, as alongside this, they put out the eShop page, and then we also have something to look at in the Japanese website. So if we go over to the eShop page, there's one important thing to note here, and that is that we scroll down at the supported languages. This is pretty much every language the Switch supports. And this is a big deal because look at this. Japanese, Korean, and Chinese are listed when this is the North American page. In Splatoon 1 and Splatoon 2, the regions actually were, well, region locked. So if you bought the game in North America, you couldn't play the game in Japanese. In my case, I bought the game from the Japanese eShop, and I can't play in English. They did this so it was easier to section off content like Splatfests, and in the case of Japan, having their own specific equipment, having some special gear for promotions. The fact that it shows every language as supported leads me to believe that Splatfests are going to be worldwide all the time, and that maybe this is the end of region-locked gear, which would be really nice. Then if we jump over to the Japanese website, has a few things, most of it we already know, but if we scroll down to these little blurbs we have here about the Squid Roll and Squid Surge, this is actually where it mentions that it gives you a bit of protection when you use it. Again, it's pretty vague, so we don't really know how much, but it does mention that you get some protection when using it. Then, the last thing I want to point out is that we scroll down, we have this stuff that talks about the specials, where here we get to see that the bubble shield is called the Great Barrier. At least the Japanese version of it is called the Great Barrier, and it refers to itself as being an improved version of a previous special. So it's probably referring to the actual bubbler from Splatoon 1, and that's pretty much it. That's all we really have. We don't have a test fire date or anything like that. I hope that that's happening. That'd be really fun. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I want to hear what you guys thought of all of this. If you're interested in sharing what you think, if there's anything I missed that you noticed, feel free to let me know. But yeah, that's it for this video. So I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.